Welcome to Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. Today's conversation promises to be an insightful one with a remarkable guest. Whether you're joining us for the first time or a regular listener, so glad you're here. Our goal is to bring you closer to the innovative leaders and thinkers shaping our future. And today I am thrilled to welcome Colonel Shawn Daniel. Colonel Daniel claims Little Rock, Arkansas as his home. He is a 1987 graduate of Catholic High School for Boys, a 1993 graduate of the United States Military Academy, and a 2014 graduate of the National Security Fellowship at the Harvard Kennedy School in Boston, Massachusetts. As an infantry officer, Shawn served in a number of different assignments from Korea to Anchorage to Boston to Tampa and many places in between. He served with the finest Americans we have wearing uniform, commanded a company and a battalion in combat, and served as the operations officer in combat for units ranging in size from 600 to over 4,000 personnel. Shawn served 7 tours in Afghanistan and 1 tour in Iraq, accumulating more than 5 years' worth of combat deployments. His awards and decorations include 4 Bronze Stars, the Combat Infantry Badge, the Master Parachutist Badge with Combat Star, and a number of other awards and decorations that largely represent the hard work of his subordinates and teammates. Shawn was inducted into the Ranger Hall of Fame in July 2022 and the Arkansas Game and Fish Hall of Fame in August 2024. He retired from the Army in 2017, and after a 4-year stint in corporate America, he now runs Darby's Warrior Support, the nonprofit that hosts veterans of the special operations community on all-inclusive hunting and fishing trips in an effort to help them cope with the wounds of war and successfully transition to the civilian sector. Shawn's been married to the former Dina Wartsmith for more than 28 years, 18 moves, and 8 combat deployments. They have 2 great and wildly successful kids and a fantastic son-in-law. Katie Grace and her husband Seth White, both graduates of the University of Alabama and now in the medical field in Birmingham, and Jake, a recent graduate of the University of Arkansas, who has started his own business in excavating. Of all the things Shawn has done in his life, the greatest job he'll tell you he ever had was and remains being a dad. Well, welcome to Tipping Spears, Shawn.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate you having me on. Honored to be here, Anna.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to talk with you. I am a Mississippi State graduate, so we played Alabama and Arkansas in football all the time.
Well, I hope you have your cowbell somewhere nearby. No need to clang that thing. Uh,
Well, can you get us started today by telling us where your story begins?
I guess my story begins when we moved to Arkansas when I was in 8th grade. A transition for my family, a transition for me. Got into a really good Catholic private high school with just a faculty that changed the direction of my life. I got involved in a Marine Corps Junior ROTC program. The priest that ran the school is just legendary, and um, I just kind of decided, hey, I want to make something of my life, and there were some upperclassmen that were pursuing service academies and doing other great things, and I just said, I kind of want to follow their lead. And I did everything right, um, to get a spot in one of the service academies, except study. Um, and I just wasn't interested. There were so many other things to do, and so senior year came around, and I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but senior year came around, and I kind of knew what West Point was going to say. So I started looking at other options and ultimately enlisted in the Arkansas National Guard to apply through my Guard unit to this place called the West Point Prep School. So you go there for a year, they take 360 cadets, they could send 180 to West Point. I was confident I could make that cut. Um, and off we went. So my 4-year college plan turned into a 5-year college plan, but I was willing to underwrite the additional year to get to where I wanted to be. Uh, so that's kind of how it all started, um, and it didn't quite end the way I had planned. So, I mean, I can go on into that if you want me to, or we can pause there.
Yeah, so it's fascinating to hear how you saw kind of the upperclassmen in high school looking at the service academies. Was there anything in particular that, in addition, that sparked your interest in serving in the military?
I mean, I enjoyed uh, I enjoyed the structure. I enjoyed the the professionalism. I enjoyed the adventure. I enjoyed being pushed physically and to a degree mentally. Um, and I enjoyed the leadership opportunities that I had in the junior ROTC program and throughout my high school. So, doing something like that professionally, I wasn't necessarily committed to a career in the military at that point. But that appealed to me. That lifestyle appealed to me. My dad was in the Guard on and off active duty
Mhm.
um, throughout, I mean, 30 something years. So it wasn't totally unfamiliar to me.
Yeah.
But the Guard life, whether you're active duty or just part-time, is very different than the full-time, active duty with an 18th Airborne Corps unit or Special Operations unit. So, um, yeah, all of it appealed to me, and I was just ready to jump in. I just probably could have applied myself academically a little more than I did to uh, to help me be a little more successful on the front end. So,
Was there a particular event or person that served as a catalyst for your career?
I think there were a lot.
Mhm.
The senior Marine instructor that ran the junior ROTC program was tremendously influential in my life. The principle and the standards that he demanded in the high school
Mhm.
uh, were were instrumental. And then just seeing some of these, juniors and seniors as you walk into this seemed big. It was 800 students ish
Mhm.
total, but you walk in as a freshman, you're kind of new to Arkansas, and here's these larger than life upperclassmen that they're headed off to these service academies or these fancy ROTC scholarships to these prestigious universities, and um, I just didn't want to be another Catholic high grad who headed to University of Arkansas and got my degree and came back to Little Rock. I wanted to do something different. To each his own, and certainly not judging those people that chose that route, but I just wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
And those people helped me, kind of develop that dream and then pursue it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know every journey, has its hurdles. Can you tell us what some of the biggest obstacles were that you faced in your career and how you overcame them?
So I mentioned I headed off to the West Point Prep School um, and was confident that I could be in the top 50% and get an appointment to a service academy, and I was well on my way. And the first semester there's a lot of self-selection. A lot of the cadets are, yeah, I came and tried this. This really isn't for
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
Kind of I'm out. And then at Christmas, the class is down to 220, 250. And so they still have to cull, a certain number of cadets that clearly aren't going to make the cut. Uh,
Yeah.
and they start doing these aptitude boards, and they'll bring in, a cadet and say, hey, you don't look great in uniform and you're failing most of your classes and your peer reports are not favorable. Have a seat in front of this panel of officers. You have 15 minutes to convince us that you ought to stick around and compete for an appointment. Well, one of my classmates walked in there and said, you're absolutely right. I don't look real good in uniform and I am failing most of my classes and my peer reports are not favorable, but Shawn Daniel has a fake ID. What are you going to do about that? And I mean, my brother-in-law and I had made a fake ID in high school, and I was dumb enough to take it to the prep school with me.
Mm,
And I used it 3 times over the course of the first semester. And there's an honor code that says a cadet will not allow, cheat, steal, nor tolerate those who do. So shortly after that young man announced that I had a fake ID, my tactical officer pulled me in his office and said, "Hey, somebody said this." And I reached in my wallet and pulled out my fake ID and I gave it to him. And after an honor board and about 2 weeks later, I was separated from the West Point Prep School. Um, and your dreams come crashing down, and you got to make the call home. Mom, Dad, I'm coming home. Oh, great, it'll be good to see you. Well, I'm actually coming home to stay. Um, embarrassing for me, embarrassing for my family. And I'd signed a contract with the Arkansas National Guard, and my family had since moved to Kentucky, and I got transitioned to the Kentucky National Guard, and and then had to go to basic training in AIT.
mhm,
And so off I went, and looking for a way to make my family proud again, because I'd embarrassed everybody, to include myself. And so um, my dad didn't really want to look at me
mhm.
over the summer, and didn't want me just hanging around the house. So he started digging through the schools program and the Kentucky National Guard, and wanted to get me to airborne and air assault school so I could, kind of boost my resume for whatever I wanted to do next. And then you just get to a lot of soul searching. Is this journey over? Do I want to try to get back in? How do I get back in? How do I redeem myself? Um, but I got offered a Ranger School slot that started 9 days after I graduated from AIT as a private first class. Um, and I took it, and I went and I graduated, and I started classes at the University of Louisville uh,
Mhm.
the day after graduating from Ranger School. And my TAC officer at the prep school said, "Hey man, you decide you want to go back to West Point, just send me your packet." And I applied myself more so than I had previously in college, and had a pretty good GPA, and reapplied to West Point and actually got in.
Wow.
Um, and so now I'm a cadet at West Point, and uh, a lot of opportunities to quit in there, a lot of
Mhm,
opportunities to rationalize, I'll just go do something different, or graduate from the University of Louisville and
mhm,
serve my time in the Guard. But I kind of felt like it was going to be something that I had left undone, even if I went
mhm,
to West Point and said, "Okay, this isn't for me," um, and resigned. I just felt like I needed to do it. Um, and that singular event, though it spanned, a year and a half, maybe longer, really changed me personally. And
mhm,
and you can tell anybody and everybody, "Hey man, you can't compromise your integrity. You can't, your word has to be your word." Um, until you learn it the hard way,
mhm,
I don't think you really internalize that. And for
mhm,
me, I just internalized a lot from
mhm,
that one incident, and yeah, and the cards that fell after that, that one incident occurred. So if I were to point to one event in my life that really impacted me and stuck with me, that would be it. And I mean, here we are. That was 1988. So, that was a long time ago. I can't do that math and never do math in public, but that was a lot of years ago. Um, and I think it was really, really developmental for me. Plenty of other trips and falls and failures and
mhm.
mistakes along the way, but that was an early one that really, really shaped the rest of my career.
Wow, what a defining moment in your trajectory there. A lot of folks don't learn those lessons. They just throw in the towel and man, you stuck it out.
Yes, and there was plenty of blood, sweat, and tears
Mhm.
um, involved in all of it, and you know, threw my hat up in the air in Mikey Stadium as a West Point grad in May of '93. So my 4-year plan turned into a 5-year plan, which became a 6-year plan, but ultimately got me to where I wanted to be. And, then it was kind of off to the races. And oh, by the way, I married my best friend's little sister. Uh,
Oh.
so the trash talking about the fake ID continues, and it'll be generational now. So, uh,
The family myth, the
yes,
lore. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's it. So. I wouldn't, as painful as it was, I wouldn't change anything if I could go back and rewrite the story. Um, some of the greatest lessons in life are the most painful ones, and that was certainly the case with that one.
So across 8 combat deployments, what did you learn about leading under sustained pressure?
I think you could probably write a book about that, and fully answering that in a podcast would probably be pretty challenging because I learned an awful lot. Um, I think as a subordinate, the greatest thing I valued was consistency.
Mhm.
We build a plan going in. There's certainly times and things that happen that make you adjust your plan,
Mhm.
but having a plan going in and sticking to the plan and not chasing rabbits and you know maintaining your composure um, regardless of what's going on really inspired me as a subordinate leader. I frequently tell a story. We did the parachute assault into southern Afghanistan to start the war on the 19th of October 2001. I was the Charlie Company commander, and we were going to our portion of the airfield and taking down this fairly large compound. And we were sending updates over the radio to the boss, and eventually the boss wanted to actually hear from me, and so he calls my RTO, and RTO says, "Hey, the boss wants to talk to you." And I pick up the phone or the hand mic, and "Hey, this is Charlie 06." And my battalion S3 was on the other side, and he could have and should have said, "Hey, Charlie 06, this is Mike 03, sit rep over." And I'd have given him an update, "Hey, breach established, we're in the 10 and 20 series building, clear," and yada yada yada. But in a breach of all radio protocol, I pick up the mic and say, "Hey, this is Charlie 06," and he says, "Hey, Shawn, uh, how you doing, buddy?" And I mean, this is my first time in combat. I'm a Ranger Company commander.
Mhm.
We're starting the war in the South. We're the pointiest, tippiest end of the spear of the Joint Special Operations Command in southern Afghanistan. And, my RPMs are running pretty high.
Mhm.
Everything's under control. We've had to make a few adjustments. The boys are doing great. Um, but it took my RPMs from 12,000 down to, 1,200. Just that one simple, you can say it was inappropriate. I call it great leadership. That one radio transmission of, "Hey, Shawn, how you doing, buddy?" And I never forgot that. And as I spoke to people on the radio in stressful situations, as I spoke on the radio in stressful situations, um, I tried to remember that and just dealing with people and communicating with them and trying to pull information out of them. Just a consistent demeanor, regardless of what's going on, can really inspire young people in stressful situations. So it sounds simple, and you can get into strategy and you can get into all these other things, targeting, effective targeting methodology, and you can go down any rabbit hole you want to, but the simple consistency of how you talk to people, how you manage people, how you
Mhm.
ask people to do superhuman things
Mhm.
in terrible conditions. You can do a lot of that with just hey Sean, how you doing, buddy?
Mhm.
Radio transmission.
Mhm. Well, so much is communicated in that question, you know?
It really is. It really is. And I'm having first night in combat, and I'm like, wow, I just learned a tremendous amount. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Uh,
such a great story. That's it's one of those kind of foundational things that folks, in the fog of war, most people would just kind of throw out. They wouldn't think about that, and it can be so grounding.
yeah. Yeah, it was a special moment, and many other special moments came.
Yeah.
I heard other people on the radio that night in equally stressful situations do things similar, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't as you hear it and you feel the impact of it. Um, but after the operation's over and you go back and you think about what you did and what other people did and what went right and what went wrong, those little things stand out as,
Mhm.
wow, that made a tremendous difference.
So you've served with some of the best, in the force. What separates elite teams from the rest?
I think you could probably write a book about that too. Uh, but I think it boils down to standards. I spent some time in the conventional force and the special operations community. Um, and I think the foundational difference is just the standards. And if you have uncompromising standards, then you are stepping off in the right direction.
Mhm.
And I felt like every day I showed up to work in the Ranger Regiment or at SOCOM, I was fighting for my job.
Mhm.
And I knew that one bad day, one bad event, one day of just, man, I just don't have it in me today. And it's over. And it's over. And there is somebody in line right behind you. In my case, probably more talented than me, probably smarter than me, but ready to step in and take your job, and the train won't miss a beat.
Mhm.
Um, and everybody knows that, and everybody is fighting for their job. Can you have a bad day? You can. You can. You just can't have a real bad day. And you certainly can't have two bad days in a row. But I mean, it starts with a standard, and it's an uncompromising standard, and everybody understands it, and everybody knows it, and everybody knows what the consequences are if you fail to meet the standard. And so, um, you go in there and you work your tail off, and you dig deep, and it's hugely rewarding to be part of that community. But I won't say it's not stressful when you get up in the morning. You're like, man, I don't feel 100% today, but I gotta perform to 110%. And you know, you make lifelong friends, you have life-changing experiences, and you look left, you look right, that everybody around you is going to meet those same standards today, or tomorrow they won't be here. And uh, I think that's where it starts. I mean, you could get into mastering the basics in terms of training, where the basics just become second nature, and your execution of the basics allow you to do more complex things, um, and mitigate the risk in that complexity. And there's a lot of different directions you can go, but I think just having, hey, here are the standards, 1 through 10 or 1 through 100. You have to be able to do A, B, and C on a moment's notice and no questions asked. And if you can't do it, you know, here's your release, sign at the bottom. Uh, and it's no surprise when you fail to meet the standards and you get released. There's nobody that said, "Well, I didn't know I couldn't do that." Well,
Mhm.
you knew, you chose to do it anyway, or you had a bad day and for whatever reason you couldn't do it. So I think that's where it starts. Um, and I think you could go a million different directions beyond that.
Mhm. Well, you've held leadership positions in the military and the private sector. What do you think is the most misunderstood element, of good leadership practice?
So I retired in 2017 and went to work in the private sector,
Mhm.
in the financial world, right? In a full service financial firm, everything from investment banking to institutional equities,
Yeah.
research, sales, and trading. Um, I, 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 I starved for a strategy.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me where it is we're going and how we're supposed to get there. Um, and I asked, how are you successful in this organization? And was told you make more money for the boss.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I sort of get that, but there has to be a plan. How are we going to do that? Are we going to, and I found myself starving for, tell me where we're going and generally how we're getting there.
Mhm.
You don't have to tell me to put one foot in front of the other. I can figure that out. But, we got to have some milestones here. We got to have some targets. We got to have, just a plan.
Mhm.
Uh, I think what I learned is that some people are motivated by money.
Mhm.
And, I learned the word incentivize. And I knew the word incentivize, well prior to retiring from the Army, but incentivize to me never meant pay me.
Mhm.
Incentivize can come in all kinds of forms, but in the corporate world, I found that incentivize was pay me.
Mhm.
And if you want me to do this project, if you want me to work with Hannah to put this group project
Mhm.
together, you're going to have to pay me.
Mhm.
Where I came from a world where, hey, Shawn, I want you and Hannah to work together to put this product together or this project or this mission or whatever. Hannah and I are teammates and, we're going to put our shoulder into this thing and we're going to push and push and push and push and push. And then we're going to high five when we get the ball in the end zone. And you're going to have a couple cold beers and then wait for the next project or the next tasking. And it just didn't work like that in corporate America. And I felt myself starving for, purpose, direction, motivation. I found myself starving for, people that I understood and people that understood me,
Mhm.
and people that had the same MO as I did, which you don't have to pay me anything. Just give me the project and Hannah and I'll put the ball in the end zone, and the thrill of victory and the
Mhm.
thrill of success is incentive enough for me. You don't have to say, if you do this, I'll give you a $50,000 bonus.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think I learned that I am motivated. Would I like to make a pile of money? Heck yeah. I mean, Heck yeah, who wouldn't? But really, that's not what motivates me.
Yeah.
Looking around the room and seeing my people,
Mhm.
and looking around the room and knowing that I can depend on those people, come hell or high water, um, is what's important to me. And so, finding my purpose and finding my people became the missing piece. And I wasn't going to find it in corporate America, was my conclusion.
Well, that's a great description of the landscape there.
And I'm not judging those people that are motivated.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's just, um, would I like a pile of it? I would. Um, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not what motivates me.
Yeah. So,
So,
Sean, can you talk to us about, you know, transitioning from the military, like what your experience was like, and any advice that you have for service members who are looking to retire or, or transition in the near future?
and I say this frequently, and I'm really, really transparent with my journey and where I was successful and where I was an absolute failure. Transitioning out of the military was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I feel like I did some hard things along the way. But hands down, the hardest thing I've ever done was was transition out. And and that's for a number of reasons. I mean, you move 18 times, you always move to a military community. And a military community is transient. Hey, Hannah just moved in next door. Let's take a pie next door and invite her to the cookout this weekend. You moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, and we think Shawn was in the military. You know, and and then people start, well, he must be this political affiliation or that political, and yeah, and I'm just like, dude, what's going on here? And I graduated
Yeah.
from high school here, and
Yeah.
I know a lot of people here, and hey, Shawn, how you doing? I've been gone for 20 something years,
Mhm.
and they're cordial and they're friendly, but you're not going
Mhm.
to get invited to the neighborhood cookout.
Yeah.
And, I was a colonel. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to be a colonel anymore, and I didn't
Mhm.
really care. I was ready to work my way up from the bottom wherever I started to wherever my potential kind of petered out. It wasn't about not being in charge. Um, and my wife, whether she would admit it or not publicly, she lost her identity too.
Yeah.
She was a military spouse, and her husband did this job or that job,
Mhm.
and now nobody understands the stories, nobody can identify with the stories, nobody can truly understand the stories. Some people want to understand the stories genuinely. Some people, the vast majority of them, just want to hear a cool story. um, and you get tired telling stories, and you realize, again, you look around the room and you say, where are my people? And what's my purpose? And your people aren't there, and your purpose no longer exists. And so
Mhm.
you've got to find that purpose, in life again. And that is a very, very painful, empty journey.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for the 4 years I spent in the corporate world because I learned a tremendous amount. Not all of it was comfortable learning, um, but they were gracious and understanding and supportive, and all the things you would expect from your employer. But at the end of the day, my people were nowhere to be found, and my purpose didn't exist because, again, I learned that money just wasn't that important to me.
Yeah.
So, um, you know, how do you tell somebody you've got to find purpose? I don't know how to do it other than to say you've got to figure out what your purpose in life is. And uh, I would venture to say if you spend a career in the military, money's probably not your purpose.
Mm.
You need something deeper, something more meaningful than just chasing money. So,
Mhm.
uh, I mean, I'm fortunate I found it, and I can go into Darby's Warrior support if you want me to now. But
Yeah.
that was my purpose. I didn't fully recognize it.
Mhm.
I grew up in Arkansas in high school duck hunting. My dad was a big duck hunter from South Carolina. This is the duck hunting capital of the world. As redneck as that sounds, there there's there are a lot of spiritual moments in the duck woods, watching the sunrise in the sky full of ducks.
Mhm.
And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so when I got to Third Ranger Battalion in Fort Benning in '99, it was the first real opportunity I had to hunt again. And I'd chase wood ducks around beaver ponds on Fort Benning, and we'd get up ridiculous hours on Saturday morning and work way too hard for three wood ducks. And they fly, by the time sunrise, you can shoot 30 minutes before sunrise. At sunrise, the hunting's over,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's over. You can stay there all day if you want to, but you're not going to see more wood ducks. And so we would call the hunts early, and I could be home. And our daughter was born shortly after we got to Fort Benning, and she'd be up hollering for scrambled eggs and her cheesy scrambled eggs. And I'd be walking in with a handful of ducks, and I could be there and help and do. So it wasn't burning that kitchen pass necessarily, but I kept telling my buddies, hey, we got to go to Arkansas and do this at the next level sometime. And would always tell them stories as we were waiting for shooting time, or putting out decoys, even though decoys
Mhm.
don't work for wood ducks, but we'd put them out anyway. And soon the war started, and we got back from our first deployment in late December, early January, and we had Martin Luther King weekend. And
Mhm.
it's a 4-day weekend. I'm like, come on, boys, let's go. And so off we went and drove all night and hunted 4 days and drove all night back, absolutely exhausted. And we killed 17 ducks in the first weekend. And I was personally and professionally embarrassed. I'm like, I've been saying all these great things about Arkansas duck hunting, and we killed 17 ducks in 4 days. That's miserable. We're doing it again next year. And so it became an annual event. Um, and we all got reassigned other units, and we would just convene back in Arkansas for this hunt. And in 2007, I had a bit of an epiphany that this was our duck numbers increased every year, and we were mollywhopping them, by 2007. But I had this epiphany that this is about so much more than how many ducks we can shoot in a 4-day weekend. This is
Mhm.
about being together. This
Mhm.
is about watching the sunrise, about listening to wings in the darkness, listening to ducks
Mhm.
quack, talking trash on good shots
Mhm.
and bad shots, and just being together. And seeing how my friends that I shared some really hard days with are holding up under the pressures of nonstop combat deployments. Because at the time you were either deployed, prepping for the next one, or recovering from the last one. And you started to see the impact on you know the body, the mind, the spirit, the
Mhm.
families, all of it. And it was a safe place, and we could talk about anything. And so we decided to start sharing it. And initially we focused on Purple Heart recipients. And initially my parents ran it out of their own house in Bald Knob, Arkansas, and funded it primarily out of pocket. And I kept arguing that we needed to run it like a business, and it didn't need to be an all volunteer force. Um, and my dad and I did the old tug of war over that for years. And then I got accepted into this program in Boston, and I had to have titanium installed in both my knees in one academic year just because of the life we lived, right? And so I had my first knee replacement in September and my last pre-op with the doctor. And he's like, all right, I'll see you Tuesday, 7 a.m. at the surgical center. Um, and he left the room. And I looked at my wife and, just said, what the hell have I done to myself? And, she's like, typical Army wife. She's like, what are you talking about, man? This is what you've always wanted to do. You got to pay to play. And I'm like, no, really, I'm 43 years old and I'm having my first of two knee replacements in one academic year. What have I done to myself? And again, she said, man, you got to pay to play. This is what you've always wanted to do. Just let's get on with it. And that went to, what have I asked of her uh,
Mhm.
as my wife, the training, the deployments, the combat deployments, all of it. And then that transition to my kids, what have I asked of them? They didn't sign up for this. Uh,
Mhm.
and then it went to what leadership failures have I had that have cost men life, limb, or eyesight, or otherwise made life hard on men I was entrusted to lead, men and women I was entrusted to lead. And then that finally led to what have I done to other human beings? My dad was a chaplain for a number of years in the Guard. I went to vacation Bible school every summer, and
Mhm.
the teachers don't know what to do with you the first day, so you color the Ten Commandments, and it says pretty clearly, "Thou shalt not kill." And we can put an ISIS, Al Qaeda, Taliban, whatever label we want to on these people, but we we shot them, and
Mhm.
they laid there on the ground screaming for their family and their God, whatever, terrified as I would be. And
Mhm.
then we shot them again and pounded our chest and screamed America.
Mhm.
And I got in a really, really dark place and picked out a spot behind the garage to shoot myself. Um, and I just needed one more bad day to do it. And, when I'd gotten to Boston, somebody encouraged me to go to this program called Home Base. They do a lot of counseling there. And I'm like, man, I'm good. I just need to get both my knees replaced and get back out to the force and deploy again. Uh, I just said, all right, I'll try this thing. And I walked in there and did their in processing and things didn't go well. And I was walking out ready to quit, and a social worker grabbed me and, Shawn, how did it go? And I turned around and looked at her, and it was written all over my face. And she snatched me up and pulled me in her office. She's like, let me just get you connected with your provider. And if you want to quit after that, you can quit, but just
Mhm.
let me get you connected with your provider. And so a few days later, Steve Durant sent me an email. Rough and tumble Bostonian, totally bald, a patch over one eye. He got his eye gouged out in a rugby match about 18 months before we met. And I mean, just a jewel of a man. And that I met with him for an hour every week and cried and laughed and cried some more. And that man saved my life. And that was the second pivot for our organization because I said to myself, or I recognized that, every guy that and gal that's done what I've done, deployment
Mhm.
after deployment after deployment, drug their family all over the free world, watch their kids go to a new school as many times
Mhm.
as I did and try to make new friends and try to join new sports teams. All these things that we've done has to either find a guy like Steve Durant
Mhm.
or something equally therapeutic, or they're going to reach for a bottle of pills, a bottle of alcohol, or a pistol
Mhm.
at the bedside table.
Mhm.
And we, suicide numbers were crazy high and we're just climbing. And so we pivoted just to the soft community because I felt
Yeah.
like the soft community they were the ones that were doing a lot of the heavy lifting, the rapid, deployment after deployment after deployment, the hardest missions overseas. Not that the conventional force wasn't grinding it out and doing some really heavy lifting too, but I just said we need to serve the soft community and keep these guys from reaching for the bottle of pills, the bottle of alcohol, or the
Mhm.
pistol on the bedside table. And so we did, and then went to corporate America, and like June the 7th, well, June the 4th, my mother-in-law passed away after a 16-year battle with kidney cancer. A few days later, a West Point classmate killed himself. And a week after that, a teammate of mine shot himself at Fort Leavenworth. And at that point, I was so miserable in my job, and I knew we were doing such great work with DWS. I said, I've got to quit, and I've got to do something to keep from losing another teammate.
Mhm.
And even if it's wrong, even if it's not as effective as I think it is, at least it's something, and maybe it'll save a handful of lives. We've been doing this since 2007. We've yet to lose a participant to suicide. Shortly after I resigned from corporate America, we started a capital campaign to build
Mhm.
our own place. We have a 10-bedroom, 10-bath lodge now, sits on 38.6 acres, has pistol ranges, rifle ranges, sporting clays ranges, a lake that's absolutely full of fish. You can't not catch a fish out there. Um, and now we're hosting, not just hunting and fishing, not just hunting events, but just regular retreats, from marriage
Mhm.
retreats to corporate events to you name it. It's a spectacular piece of property, and excuse me, I think we're changing lives and saving lives one weekend at a time, and I'm proud to be a part of it, and um, I really think we're doing the Lord's work every weekend.
Well, so fascinating to hear about the impact y'all are making, and then, kind of the painful experiences that kind of increased your awareness to this need. It was challenges that not only, you were facing, but across kind of the broad military and veteran community. I mean, it was extremely, we need organizations like Darby's Warrior Sport.
I, I think we're doing some amazing stuff, and we set out to raise $2.5 million to build this place,
Mhm.
and we raised that and then some. And I'm not a fundraiser,
Yeah.
but if you get out there and you tell the story about some of the people that I served
Yeah.
with, um, it it just inspires people to support it, and
Yeah.
they've been incredibly generous um, over the years, and I look forward to where this journey takes us from here. But I think it's all going to be a good place.
So, Shawn, I know many young people, they want to make a difference. What guidance do you offer those who feel called to service, but they're not sure where to start? Maybe they don't have a family member who's, served in the military, or they're just not sure what to do.
Uh, Call me. I mean, I think the military is a fantastic place to start.
Mhm.
And I viewed, you know, I'm ashamed of this, but in high school I viewed those people that, just say, hey, I'm going to enlist in the army, and I'm like, come on, man, you got better options than that. But I really, in hindsight, I think it's a fantastic place to start. If you don't know what you want to do and you don't have a family business to take over and you really are interested in serving, sign up, get a ranger contract, get an airborne contract, go be a mechanic, a cook, whatever. But when you get in that big melting pot we call the United States military, you meet some fascinating people,
Mhm.
and you really see what opportunities are out there. And I can't tell you how many people, well, I just signed up for 4 years to try to figure out what I want to do, and I know exactly what I want to do now, and I'm taking my GI Bill, and I'm going to go to school, and I'm going to get the right degree, and I'm going to go do exactly what I now know I want to do. And others are inspired to just, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but this is it. I've found it. And maybe I don't stay a ranger in, one of the battalions, or a mechanic in the 82nd. Maybe I really want to fly helicopters. I mean, there's anything you want to do in the Army, you can do. You just kind of got to figure out what it is. And I say Army, military at large, and you want to go fly helicopters in the Marine Corps, right on, let's go. Um, there's a way. If there's a will, there's a way. And to me, it's just so great to see young people find themselves and their
Mhm.
purpose and move out with a newfound enthusiasm and commitment to to doing their life's work. So I just any chance I get, excuse me, I advocate for, hey man, I know it's scary and I know your parents may not be thrilled with the idea, particularly your mom, and she can send me all the hateful emails she wants to send me. But man, sign on the dotted line and go be a Marine Force Recon guy. Go be,
Mhm.
a Navy SEAL, go be a U.S. Army Ranger, go set the bar high and don't quit. And
Mhm.
you'll be amazed at what you find on the other side.
Shawn, do you have any final words of advice or parting thoughts for the audience today?
So I do, and I appreciate an opportunity to take a swing at this question. So I've got this aerodynamic new haircut, um, and uh, and maybe you can see some of the scabs on my forehead still. Um, uh, a close friend of mine suggested that I sign up for this home-based program up in Boston. It's primarily focused on traumatic brain injury and cervical spine injuries, and they pay for everything. And you go up there on a Saturday, and they fly you home the following Friday, and they pay for lodging and all the medical stuff. And Sunday you get an MRI of the longest MRI you may ever sit in. At least that's what it felt like to me at the time. It was close to an hour, and uh, and they just check out your brain. And my dad and late in life got kind of angry, and I don't want to be like that. And so I wanted to know what's going on, inside the old brain housing group, and for better for worse, I just wanted to know. And a good friend of mine again pressured me and held me accountable to go, and I signed up, and it's a 15 to 18 month waiting list. And you get the MRI on Sunday, and then you meet with all these specialists and, neurosurgeons or neurologists and occupational therapy, physical therapy, and cognitive testing. And I mean, all this excruciatingly painful testing where you're not really proud of your results
Mhm.
and or at least the process is painful, whether the results are complimentary or not. And they pulled me out of our regular classes or like regular lineup of appointments on Wednesday and said, hey, you have a lesion on the front left lobe of your brain. And this was the first week of March. And, and the neurologist is like, hey, this is probably what it is. And, when you hear brain cancer, that's kind of scary. Um, and they got me into another MRI with contrast, a CAT scan with contrast, got me to a neuro-oncologist the next day and a neurosurgeon the following Monday. And 3 weeks ago today, I had a craniotomy to remove uh, a malignant lesion on the front left lobe of my brain. All of it's treatable. Um, it's low grade, slow growth, and I'm expected to live for decades, which is good because I want to live for decades more. But you just never know what's going on, and it's hard to make time for programs like this. But you you owe it to your family, and you owe it to yourself to take advantage of some of these things that are out there, so that you can catch them early, so that you can get them treated, so that you can enjoy time with your grandkids. Uh, and they can get to know you and you can get to know them. So my parting words are Sorry. Um, don't say that's for somebody else. Don't say that's something I just don't have time for. Don't say, well, I'll do that next year. Get in line and take care of you, because the military has asked a tremendous amount um, from you and from your family, and and these programs are for you. So I'm grateful. A friend, a true friend, held me accountable. Um, I'm grateful for the diagnosis.
Mhm.
Um, as painful as it was and as it is, I'm grateful for the diagnosis because now we're ahead of it and we're gonna win. I don't know what winning looks like yet, but we're gonna win. And uh, you know, and I'd say the same is true for Darby's Warrior Support. If you got a bunch of old teammates you'd like to get together with, reach out to me. You can find us on the internet. We got a website. It's
Mhm.
stale. We're working on that too. But my contact information is in there, and if you and your teammates need an opportunity to just watch the sunrise and watch the sunset and check on each other, come out and see us. So those are my parting shots. Sorry to get a little emotional there. It's only been 3 weeks, and I'm gonna get a haircut every 2 weeks kind of guy, and I can't get one for 3 more weeks, and it's going to be the most painful part of this surgery. So,
Well, Shawn, you redefined my definition of tough. I've had a lot of war horses on the podcast, but you were the first 3 weeks out of brain surgery to come
well,
on here.
you never know what you're capable of.
I appreciate you taking time to come on here and share your insights, your lessons learned, your experiences. I know your contribution to our nation have impacted so many, and for that, we are all very grateful.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Oh.
Really enjoyed it.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Tipping Spears with Hannah Becker. Hope this conversation sparked new ideas and challenged the way you think about the future. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll catch you next time with another exciting guest.